My husband sat across from me with his head in his hands, voice trembling, eyes red like he hadn't slept in days. "I'm drowning in debt," he whispered. "We've lost everything." He said creditors were circling, that lawsuits were coming, that staying married to him would ruin my life. Then he slid the divorce papers toward me and said the words he'd practiced carefully. "I love you too much to drag you down with me. I need you to sign." So I did. I cried. I shook. I pretended my heart was breaking. I signed every page. And exactly 1 hour later, my husband, already celebrating with his mistress, was left completely speechless when he found out I had just inherited $150 million. Because the debt was fake, the affair was real, and the divorce? It was the best gift he ever gave me. The divorce papers smelled like cheap ink and arrogance. I remember that clearly. My husband, Daniel, sat at the dining table pretending to be a broken man, rubbing his temples like the weight of the world had finally crushed him. "I've failed you," he said softly. If there were awards for acting, he deserved one. His suit jacket was gone, rolled sleeves instead, just casual enough to suggest vulnerability. His wedding ring sat deliberately on the table, like a prop in a tragic play. I stood by the window, arms wrapped around myself, staring at the street without seeing it. "Tell me again," I said quietly. Daniel hesitated, just long enough to sell the lie. "I owe money," he said. "A lot. Bad investments. Things went south fast." "How much?" I asked. He exhaled shakily. "Enough to ruin you if you stay married to me." That sentence was calculated. He wanted me scared, and I was just not in the way he thought. Over the past month, Daniel had slowly dismantled our marriage with precision. First came the late nights, then the whispered phone calls, then the sudden obsession with protecting me financially. Finally, the confession. "We need a divorce," he said, eyes glossy. "Only on paper. Until I fix this." My throat tightened. Divorce. The word landed like a punch. "Is there someone else?" I asked. He looked offended. "No. God, no. How could you even think that?" I apologized. That was my mistake. Or so he believed. Now he slid the papers toward me. "Just sign," he murmured. "I'll take all the debt. You walk away clean." I stared at the documents. They were airtight. Too airtight. He'd clearly prepared for this long before I ever knew. "After this," I whispered, "we're still us, right?" Daniel stood, crossed the room, and pulled me into a hug. I could feel his heartbeat, steady, calm. Not a man drowning. A man executing a plan. "Of course," he said, kissing my hair. "This is just temporary." I cried into his chest. On purpose. Because men like Daniel never suspect a woman who looks broken. I signed. Page after page. My signature neat. Controlled. When I finished, Daniel's shoulders relaxed for the first time in weeks. He tried to hide it. Failed. "There," he said softly. "I'm so sorry." I nodded. "I'll pack tonight." He didn't argue. That hurt more than anything. I moved out within hours. Daniel insisted on space. He even offered to help me load boxes into my car. He was almost cheerful. That should have been my confirmation. By the time I reached my temporary apartment, a quiet place my sister had lined up, I already knew the truth. But knowing isn't the same as proving. So I checked. Credit reports, court records, business filings. Nothing. No liens. No judgments. No lawsuits. In fact, Daniel's company had just finalized a 7-figure acquisition. You don't do that when you're bankrupt. I laughed aloud, alone in the apartment. "Well," I said to the empty room, "that answers that." Then my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I answered. A lawyer's voice came through, calm and professional. "Mrs. Hale?" he asked. "Yes. I'm calling regarding the estate of Margaret Whitmore." My heart skipped. My great aunt, the woman who never married, never had children, and once told me, "Never depend on a man to protect you." "Yes," I said slowly. "What about her?" "She passed away this morning," he said, "and you are the sole beneficiary." The room tilted. I don't understand." "She left you her entire estate," he continued. "Liquid assets, holdings, properties." "How much?" I whispered. He paused. "Approximately $150 million. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. I sat down hard on the floor. Daniel had just finalized the divorce an hour ago. An hour. If I delayed, if I questioned, If I'd fought, he would have taken half. My phone buzzed again. A text from Daniel. Daniel, hope you're settling in. We'll talk soon. I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I was free, and because Daniel had no idea what he'd just lost. I didn't tell anyone, not my sister, not my closest friend, not even the lawyer, yet. I needed one thing first. Time. Because money doesn't change people immediately. It reveals them. And I wanted to see exactly who Daniel was when he realized what he'd done. I sat on the floor of the apartment long after the call ended, phone still in my hand, replaying the words in my head. Approximately $150 million. The number didn't feel real. It felt like a typo, a mistake, a prank. But when the lawyer emailed the documentation, wills, trusts, asset summaries, reality settled in like a weight. Margaret had planned everything. Carefully, deliberately. She'd placed the assets in a private trust, activated upon my divorce or widowhood. Upon divorce, I laughed out loud. She'd known. She always knew. I wiped my face, stood, and poured myself a glass of water because shaking hands needed something to hold. Then my phone buzzed again. Daniel, I'll stop by tomorrow to pick up the rest of my things. Tomorrow. He was already reclaiming territory. I stared at the message, then typed back something simple. Me, that won't be necessary. I'll have your belongings boxed. Polite, neutral, unemotional. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. Then another message came through. Daniel, no need to be cold. Cold, from a man who had surgically removed me from his life. I didn't respond. The next morning, I met with the lawyer. His office was all glass and quiet confidence, the kind of place Daniel loved to pretend he belonged in. The lawyer, Mr. Caldwell, reviewed everything while I watched his expression shift from professional detachment to genuine surprise. This is exceptionally well structured, he said finally. That sounds like her, I replied. She anticipated potential disputes. The timing clause alone is, he shook his head slightly. Impressive. What does this mean for my divorce? I asked. He smiled faintly. It means your ex-husband walked away from one of the largest personal fortunes I've seen this year. I nodded. And there's no legal way for him to claim it? None, Caldwell said firmly. The divorce was finalized before the inheritance vested. He has zero claim. Zero. The word felt clean. Precise. Perfect. I left the office calmer than I'd been in months. And that's when the universe delivered the moment I didn't even have to orchestrate. I was halfway to my car when I heard my name. Claire. I turned. Daniel stood on the sidewalk, sunglasses on, phone in hand, already annoyed. I texted you, he said. Why didn't you answer? I smiled politely. I was busy. He frowned. With what? I tilted my head. Meeting with my lawyer. Something flickered in his expression. About what? Closure. He scoffed. Come on. We said we'd be civil. Then be civil, I replied calmly. He studied my face. Too carefully. You look different, he said slowly. Do I? Yes. His jaw tightened. Less emotional. I shrugged. Grief passes. He didn't like that. Listen, he said, lowering his voice. I know this has been hard, but things are turning around for me. Of course they were. I'm glad, I said. He leaned closer. I don't want you struggling. If you need money. No, I said gently. I'm fine. That stopped him. Fine, he repeated. Claire, you moved into a short-term apartment. And you don't even have a job that. I said I'm fine. The edge crept into his voice. You don't need to pretend. I met his eyes fully then. I'm not pretending. There was a long pause. Then he smiled. Too wide. Okay, he said. Good. But his hand tightened around his phone. He was uneasy. He just didn't know why yet. That afternoon, I received a call from a mutual acquaintance. A woman Daniel loved to impress. Claire, she chirped. I heard about the divorce. I'm so sorry. Thank you, I said. Daniel seems relieved, she added, hesitating. I hummed. He mentioned he's starting fresh. New opportunities. I smiled to myself. I'm sure. Then she said the words I'd been waiting for. And he told us he had to leave the marriage because you'd be financially ruined. There it was. The narrative. I paused deliberately. Oh, I said lightly. That's interesting. Why? Because it's not accurate. Silence. Then, What do you mean? I didn't explain. I didn't correct. I didn't defend. I simply said, you'll hear soon enough. And into the call. That evening, the first article dropped. A small business column. Nothing flashy. Just a mention. Whitmore Estate transfers majority assets to sole heir, Claire Hale. No photo. No interview. Just facts. The kind Daniel read religiously. The kind he refreshed obsessively. My phone buzzed. Once. Twice. 5 times. Daniel. I let it ring. Finally, a voicemail. His voice was different. Claire, he said, breathless. Where are you? Pause. Call me. Please. Not anger. Not control. Panic. I waited another 10 minutes. Then I called him back. Hello. Did you know? He blurted. Know what? The Whitmore inheritance, he said. The article. Oh, I replied softly. That. Silence. Then. How long? I found out yesterday. Another pause. His voice dropped to a whisper. How much? Enough. I could hear his breathing. Fast. Uneven. You signed the divorce. I continued calmly. Remember? That was, he stopped. Swallowed. That was because of the debt. I smiled. The debt you pretended to have. Claire. You lied. I said. And I believed you. No. He said quickly. You don't understand. Understand perfectly. I interrupted. You want to be free. Now you are. His voice cracked. You could help me. There it was. Not apology. Not regret. Opportunity. I agreed. Hope flared in his silence. But I won't. The sound he made then. Small. Broken. Unrecognizable. You left me with nothing, he said. I paused. Then delivered the truth. No. I said quietly. You left yourself with nothing. I ended the call. Across the city, Daniel was probably sitting in shock. Calculating. Replaying every second. Every signature. Every lie. And realizing the truth far too late. He hadn't outplayed me. He'd freed me. And the game he thought he'd won had only just begun. Daniel didn't sleep that night. I knew because he texted me at 2:17 a.m. Then again at 2:41. Then at 3:06. I didn't answer any of them. Desperation has a rhythm. You can hear it when someone runs out of options. By morning, the tone shifted. Not pleading. Strategic. Daniel, we should meet. There are things we need to discuss like adults. Adults. The word felt ironic coming from a man who had staged a fake financial collapse to replace his wife. I didn't reply. Instead, I watched. Because when people panic, they start talking to the wrong people. At 9:30 a.m., my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in months. Lena, Daniel's mistress. The woman whose existence he'd denied with such practiced sincerity. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. Hello. Her voice came fast, brittle. I didn't know, she said immediately. I swear I didn't know. Didn't know what? I asked calmly. That he lied to you, she rushed. About the debt. About everything. I smiled faintly. Of course you didn't. She exhaled sharply. He told me you were unstable, she said. That you'd lose everything in the divorce. There was again. The same script. Different audience. And now? I asked. There was a pause. I saw the article, she admitted. About the inheritance. Silence stretched. I didn't sign up for this, she said finally. For what? For him being broke. I laughed. Not loudly. Just enough. That's interesting, I said. Because when he divorced me, he thought I was the one who'd be ruined. Her voice dropped. He proposed to me last night. I stopped smiling. Oh, he said it was the only way to move forward, she continued. To rebuild. Rebuild. With what? And what did you say? I asked. Another pause. I asked him how much money he actually had. There it was. And he didn't answer. The truth was unraveling faster than Daniel could contain it. I don't know why you're calling me, I said gently. Her voice cracked. I need to understand who I'm dealing with. I considered that. Then said, you already do. She inhaled shakily. He told me you were heartbroken, that you'd never recover. I smiled again. He underestimated both of us, I said, just in different ways. She was quiet for a long time. Then, he wants you to help him, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Of course he does. He said you'd come around, she added. That you were emotional. That's convenient. He also said, Lena continued carefully, that if you don't help him, things could get messy. I felt my spine straighten. Messy how? He didn't say, but he sounded angry. I didn't hesitate. If he contact you again about me, I said calmly, tell him all communication goes through lawyers. She hesitated. You're not scared of him? No, I said. I'm done with him. That seemed to land. I think I am too, she whispered. I ended the call without another word. By noon, Daniel's world was collapsing in real time. His company's board requested an emergency meeting, not because of the inheritance, but because trust was suddenly an issue. His narrative no longer held. He'd claimed financial disaster, then finalized a clean divorce, then been publicly connected to a massive inheritance he no longer had access to. People noticed. Patterns matter in business, and lies always leave fingerprints. At 1:14 p.m., I received an email from Daniel's assistant. Polite, professional, panicked. Daniel would like to request a private meeting to discuss potential mediation. Mediation, another word for salvage. I forwarded it to my lawyer. Then I blocked Daniel's number. Again, this time permanently. That evening, I attended a small charity gala. Not because I needed the publicity, but because I needed to remind myself who I was before Daniel, and who I could be again. The room buzzed with quiet wealth and careful conversation. Someone recognized me, then another, not as Daniel's wife, but as Margaret Whitmore's heir. Daniel wasn't there. He wasn't invited, and that omission spoke louder than any headline. As I sipped champagne, a woman leaned in and whispered, "Is it true he didn't know?" I met her eyes. Yes. Her lips curved into a slow smile. "Oh," she said, "that must have hurt." I smiled back. He did it to himself. Later that night, my phone buzzed one last time. A message from an unknown number. But I recognized the cadence immediately. "Unknown, you think this is funny?" I didn't reply. Another message followed. "Unknown, you humiliated me." There was again. Humiliation. Not betrayal. Not deceit. His pride was the only injury he acknowledged. I typed one final response. "Me, you asked for freedom. I gave it to you." 3 dots appeared, then vanished. No reply came after that. And I knew, with quiet certainty, that Daniel had finally understood the truth. He didn't lose me because of money. He lost everything because he lied. And the woman he traded me for was already planning her exit. Daniel didn't come at me directly. That would have required humility. Instead, he tried to rewrite the story. By the end of the week, the narrative had shifted quietly, deliberately, through the channels he still thought he controlled. Whispers at industry dinners. Carefully worded concerns shared over drinks. Casual mentions of my instability. The irony was almost impressive. He'd lied about debt, lied about love, lied about loyalty. But now he wanted people to believe I was the unreliable one. Too emotional, too dramatic, too lucky. Luck, apparently, was suspicious when it didn't belong to him. I heard about it from a banker I barely knew. He called under the pretense of congratulating me, then said, carefully, "I assume you're aware of concerns?" "What kind of concerns?" I asked. "Well," he said, lowering his voice, "Daniel mentioned you were overwhelmed, that you might not be prepared to manage an estate of this size." I smiled to myself. Did he mention that I wasn't his wife anymore? I asked. A pause. "No," the banker admitted. "Then perhaps," I said evenly, "his opinion is no longer relevant." Another pause, longer this time. "I suppose you're right," he said. I ended the call and made a note. Daniel wasn't just panicking. He was attacking. And that meant one thing. He was losing control faster than he could tolerate. That evening, Lena called again. She didn't bother with pleasantries this time. "He showed up at my apartment," she said. My posture stiffened. "Was he invited?" "No," she said quickly. And he wasn't calm. She exhaled sharply. He accused me of leaking information, of turning people against him. I leaned back in my chair. "And did you?" She hesitated. I didn't defend him. That told me everything. "He said you manipulated me," she continued. "That you planned this." I laughed softly. "That's convenient." "He's spiraling," she said. "He keeps talking about what's fair." "Fair?" I echoed. "Yes. He says you didn't earn the inheritance." There it was. The real grievance. Not the divorce. Not the betrayal. The fact that money had chosen me. And what do you think? I asked. Silence. Then, quietly, I think he's dangerous when he feels cornered. I closed my eyes. That was the sentence I'd been waiting for. Then you should leave, I said. I am, she replied immediately. I packed this morning. Smart girl. Daniel crossed the line the next day. He filed an injunction, not against me directly, against the trust, claiming undue influence, claiming mental incompetence, claiming, of all things, that I had coerced Margaret Whitmore before her death. It was absurd, and it was public. My lawyer called me within minutes. He's desperate, she said flatly, and sloppy. What does this mean? It means he's officially on record making false claims. I smiled. That sounds expensive. It will be, she confirmed, and unsuccessful. But Daniel wasn't aiming to win. He was aiming to stall, to disrupt, to exhaust. Men like him don't need victory. They need leverage. The hearing was scheduled quickly. Daniel showed up looking polished, too polished, like a man playing a role he'd already lost. When he saw me across the room, something dark flickered behind his eyes. I met his gaze without flinching. This time, he looked away first. The judge didn't entertain theatrics. Evidence was presented. Medical records, legal documentation, video messages Margaret had recorded years earlier. One played in the courtroom. Her voice, sharp, amused, unapologetic, filled the space. If anyone questions my decision, she said, especially a man who benefits from my niece's obedience, then I suggest you check their motives. Daniel went pale. The judge didn't even look at him when she ruled. Petition denied, she said, and I cautioned the petitioner against further frivolous filings. Gavel. Done. Outside the courtroom, Daniel stopped me. Are you happy now? He asked, voice tight. I looked at him, really looked, at the man who thought he could discard me like a liability. I'm at peace, I said. You didn't have to destroy me, he snapped. I tilted my head. I didn't destroy you. He clenched his jaw. You took everything. No, I said calmly. I took nothing. I stepped closer. You gambled on my silence, I continued. You bet on my fear. His eyes flickered. And you lost. For a moment, just a moment, I thought he might say something human. Instead, he whispered, "This isn't over." I smiled gently. "It is," I said. "You just don't know it yet." He turned and walked away. Shoulders rigid. Steps uneven. A man who'd run out of angles. That night, Lena texted me one last time. "Lena." He showed up drunk. I didn't let him in. I replied immediately. "Me good. Lena, I'm done. Completely." I didn't answer, because I didn't need to. Daniel had burned every bridge himself. And tomorrow, the final one would collapse. Daniel had always cared more about perception than reality. That's why his next move wasn't legal. It was social. The kind of pressure that doesn't leave fingerprints, but leaves scars. Within 48 hours of the failed injunction, invitations I'd already accepted began to quietly disappear. A charity board postponed a meeting. A private dinner was rescheduled indefinitely. A magazine interview request vanished without explanation. Subtle, coordinated, desperate. He wasn't trying to beat me in court anymore. He was trying to isolate me. The irony was painful. Isolation had once worked on me. But now, I had money, lawyers, and something Daniel never expected. Visibility. My attorney caught it before I did. "He's calling people," she said, "questioning your stability, suggesting you're unpredictable with money." I exhaled slowly. "Let him," I said. There was a pause on the line. "You're not angry?" "I'm done reacting," I replied. "I'm responding." And responding required timing. The Whitmore Foundation Gala was scheduled for Saturday night. Black tie, high profile, unavoidable. Daniel had assumed I wouldn't show. That assumption would cost him everything. I arrived 10 minutes late, intentionally. Long enough for the room to settle. Long enough for people to notice the absence. And then, I walked in. The conversations didn't stop. They shifted. Heads turned. Whispers rippled. Eyes tracked me across the room. Not because I was loud, but because I was unafraid. I wore a simple black dress. No statement jewelry. No visible extravagance. Power doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly and lets others adjust. A board member approached me first. "Claire," she said warmly. I'm glad you came. Of course, I replied. Margaret would have expected nothing less. That name did its work. Others followed. Bankers, attorneys, donors. No one mentioned Daniel. That silence was deliberate and deafening. He arrived late, uninvited. I watched him from across the room as he realized, too slowly, that the terrain had changed. People didn't move toward him. They moved around him. He scanned the crowd, searching for allies. Found none. Then he saw me. The look on his face was almost worth everything. Shock, anger, calculation. He approached, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You look well, he said. So do you. I replied politely. A lie, but an unnecessary one. You didn't tell me you'd be here, he said. I don't know you my schedule, I answered. His jaw tightened. People nearby pretended not to listen. They always do. I hear you've been busy, he said. So have you, I replied. Filing frivolous claims. Calling bankers. A flicker of panic crossed his face. You don't know what you're talking about. I do, I said softly. And so do they. I gestured subtly around us. He followed my gaze and understood. The room wasn't hostile. It was closed. You're trying to ruin me, he hissed. I smiled faintly. You're confusing consequences with intent. He leaned closer. You think money makes you untouchable? No, I said calmly. I think the truth does. That's when it happened. A donor, one of Daniel's longtime supporters, stepped between us. Daniel, the man said firmly, this isn't appropriate. Daniel stiffened. We're having a private conversation. No, the man replied. You're making people uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. Daniel had spent years making me feel that way. Now the tables were quiet and watching. He laughed sharply. Of course, he said. I forget how easily influenced people are. The donor didn't flinch. I reviewed the injunction filing, he said, and the denial. Daniel's face drained of color. Did you? Daniel asked. Yes, the man said. And I won't be funding your next round. Silence. Pure. Absolute. Daniel turned to me, eyes wild. You planned this, he said. I met his gaze steadily. You planned your exit, I replied. I planned my future. He opened his mouth and stopped because Lena had just entered the room. Alone. She didn't look at Daniel. She walked straight toward me. Claire, she said, voice steady. May I speak with you? The room held its breath. Of course, I replied. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. What are you doing? He demanded. Lena turned to him calmly. Leaving, she said. And then, to me, I told them everything. The last thread snapped. Daniel stood there, exposed and shaking, as conversations resumed around us. Not whispers now. Certainties. I stepped back. Good luck, Daniel, I said quietly. He didn't respond. He couldn't, because everyone finally saw what I had already survived. And this time, there was no stage left for him to perform on. Daniel disappeared for 3 days after the gala. No calls, no texts, no late-night threats wrapped in wounded pride. Silence. That was how I knew he was scrambling. Men like Daniel don't retreat, they regroup. They call favors, pull strings, search for cracks that can still pry open. And when they can't find any, they start making mistakes that can't be undone. The first mistake came on day 4. My attorney called early that morning. He tried to move money, she said without preamble. I sat up in bed. Whose money? His company's. Into a personal account. I closed my eyes. That's illegal. Yes, she said calmly. And very traceable. He's panicking. He's hemorrhaging, she corrected. Which means regulators are about to get curious. By noon, curiosity turned official. A notice arrived from the Financial Oversight Board. Daniel's company was under review. Emergency audits. Temporary freeze on discretionary transfers. The doors were closing. At 2 p.m., Lena called. Her voice sounded lighter. Freer. I gave a statement, she said. To whom? I asked, though I already knew. Your lawyer. And the board. And the investigators. I smiled. Good. He tried to spin it, she continued. Said you manipulated him. That I was confused. And I showed them the messages, she said. The ones where he explained the fake debt plan. Step by step. I exhaled slowly. That was brave. It was necessary, she replied. I don't want to be the woman who stayed silent. Neither did I. The headlines follow by evening. Not screaming scandals. Those come later. These were surgical. Hale Industries under financial review amid leadership concerns. Board questions executive conduct following legal filings. Daniel's name appeared everywhere without appearing at all. That's how reputations really die. Quietly, thoroughly, irreversibly. He finally called me that night. From a block number. I answered, not because I owed him anything, but because I wanted the final measure of who he'd become. Claire, he said hoarsely, you need to call this off. I can't, I replied. And I wouldn't if I could. You don't understand what they're doing, he snapped. They're tearing my life apart. I leaned back in my chair. No, I said evenly. They're looking at it. Silence. Then, bitterly, you enjoyed this. No, I said. I endured you. He laughed. A broken sound. You think you're better than me now? I think I'm free. His voice dropped. You wouldn't have survived without my ambition. I smiled sadly. I survived despite it. He inhaled sharply. You could still fix this, he said. You could make statements. Smooth things over. For you? Yes. I shook my head. I won't lie to save you, I said. You taught me what lies cost. His breathing turned ragged. I loved you, he said suddenly. The words landed hollow. You love control, I replied. I was convenient. He didn't deny it. That told me everything. I hope you get help, I said quietly. Then I ended the call. The following week, the board acted. Daniel was placed on indefinite leave pending investigation. Access revoked. Authority suspended. Decision stripped away. The man who had orchestrated my removal from his life was escorted out of his own building by security. I didn't watch. I didn't need to. Because power isn't proven by witnessing someone else fall. It's proven by no longer needing to. I spent that afternoon signing papers. Not settlements. Not defenses. Foundations. Scholarships. Endowments. Programs for women rebuilding after financial abuse. Margaret had left me money, but she'd also left me purpose. One of the documents paused me. A simple line, handwritten in her will. Never let anyone convince you that survival is small. I smiled through tears. That evening, I stood on my balcony, city lights stretching endlessly before me. My phone buzzed once more. A news alert. Former executive Daniel Hale resigns amid ongoing investigation. Resigns. The word was generous, but it didn't matter. His chapter was closing. Mine had already begun. And for the first time since signing those papers, I felt no anger, no triumph, only clarity, because the real game wasn't revenge. It was reclaiming a life I'd almost handed away. Daniel's resignation didn't calm the waters. It poisoned them. Once a man falls far enough, people stop protecting him, not out of morality, but self-preservation. And Daniel had spent years climbing by leaning on others. When he slipped, every hand pulled away at once. The first call came from someone I didn't recognize. Mrs. Hale, a cautious voice said, "My name is Victor Ramirez. I used to do consulting work for your ex-husband." "Used to?" I asked. "Yes," he said, briefly, "and I believe you should know something." I closed my eyes. This was the phase Margaret used to warn me about, when silence becomes expensive. "I'm listening," I said. "There were discrepancies," Victor continued. "Not just recently. Years back. Hidden liabilities, shell movements, quiet settlements." My spine straightened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because your name appears in some of the documentation," he said carefully. "Not as a participant, as a shield." The word hit hard. Shield. He structured certain transactions to appear marital, Victor said, to distribute perceived risk. I exhaled slowly. So when he claimed debt, he wasn't lying about everything, Victor interrupted. He was lying about where it came from. A chill crept up my arms. "What kind of liabilities?" I asked. Victor hesitated. "The kind that don't disappear quietly anymore." My attorney confirmed it within hours. "Victor isn't wrong," she said grimly. "Daniel's audit opened doors no one expected." "Am I exposed?" I asked. "No," she said firmly. "The divorce saved you. Legally and financially." There was again the cruel irony, the betrayal that had freed me. "But," she added, "they may still call you as a witness." I nodded. "I'll cooperate." "You don't have to," I want to, I said. I won't protect him. Silence on the line. Then good. The subpoena arrived 3 days later. Formal, unavoidable, final. Daniel tried to contact me immediately after, from a new number. I didn't answer. Then another message came. Daniel, they're twisting things. You know me. I deleted it. Another message followed. Daniel, if you testify, they'll destroy me. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back one sentence. Me, you destroyed yourself long before I left. I blocked the number. Again, for the last time. The hearing was not dramatic. No shouting, no courtroom theatrics, just documents, timelines, patterns. The truth rarely needs volume. I sat at the witness table while Daniel sat across the room, smaller than I'd ever seen him. His suit didn't fit right. His confidence was gone. When I was sworn in, he finally looked at me, not with anger, with fear. The prosecutor's questions were precise. Did your husband ever discuss debt with you prior to filing for divorce? Yes. Did he present it as sudden? Yes. Did he request the divorce under the claim that it would protect you financially? Yes. Was any of that later proven false? Yes. Daniel's lawyer objected twice. Both times, the judge overruled. Then came the question that changed everything. Mrs. Hale, the prosecutor said, did you ever authorize the use of your marital status to obscure financial risk? No, I said clearly. Did you benefit from those actions? No. Were you aware of them? No. Daniel's shoulders slumped. He knew. This was the moment the shield shattered. Outside the building, reporters waited. I didn't stop, but I heard the questions anyway. Did you know? Do you feel responsible? Do you regret signing the divorce papers? I kept walking, because regret is a luxury for people who didn't survive something. That night, I received one final letter. Handwritten, delivered by courier. Daniel's handwriting. I hesitated before opening it. Then I read, Claire, I never meant for this to happen. I thought I could control the outcome. I thought you'd understand. I was wrong. I folded the letter neatly. Not because it mattered, but because closure doesn't need destruction. It needs acknowledgement. I placed the letter in a drawer and locked it. The next morning, the final headline appeared. The one Daniel had feared most. Former executive charged in financial misconduct case. Investigation ongoing. Charged. Not accused. Not suspected. Charged. My phone buzzed. Lena, it's over. I replied simply. Me, yes. It is. But as I sat at my desk later that day, reviewing documents for the foundation, my assistant hesitated in the doorway. There's someone here asking for you, she said carefully. Who? She swallowed. Daniel's father. My heart stilled. I hadn't expected that. Did you tell him I'm busy? I asked. Yes, she said. He said he'd wait. I stare out the window. This is the last thread. The final echo of a life I'd already outgrown. I stood. Tell him he has 5 minutes, I said. As I walked toward the meeting room, one thought settled calmly in my chest. Some debts aren't financial. They're inherited, and they always come due. Daniel's father stood when I entered the room. He looked older than I remembered. Not frail, but diminished. Like a man who had spent years defending something he no longer recognized. Claire, he said softly. I nodded. Mr. Hale. He gestured toward the chair across from him, but didn't sit until I did. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he exhaled. I didn't raise him like this, he said. I met his eyes. I believe you. That seemed to surprise him. You do? Yes, I said. But you raised him to believe he could avoid consequences. He flinched, not defensively, but honestly. That may be true, he admitted. Silence settled again. He told me you were cold. Mr. Hale continued. Unforgiving. I tilted my head slightly. And now, he said quietly, I see a woman who survived something my son created. I didn't respond. Not because I disagreed, but because validation didn't change facts. He asked me to speak to you, Mr. Hale said. To ask for mercy. I folded my hands neatly on the table. What does mercy look like to you? He hesitated. Public restraint, he said. Discretion. Silence. There it was. The final request. Daniel believes, he added carefully, that if you don't pursue further civil action, things may stabilize. I smiled faintly. I'm not pursuing him, I said. The law is. Mr. Hale's shoulders sagged. He's terrified, he admitted. He doesn't sleep. He thinks everyone hates him. I considered that, then said, he taught me that fear doesn't excuse harm. The words hung between us. I won't interfere, I continued. I won't exaggerate, and I won't lie. He nodded slowly. But I won't protect him, I finished. Not anymore. Mr. Hale closed his eyes. Understand, he said. I stood. Our 5 minutes were up. As I reached the door, he spoke again. For what it's worth, he said, voice thick, I'm sorry. I turned back. So am I replied, just for different reasons. Then I left. The court proceedings moved quickly after that. Charges solidified. Accounts frozen. Associates questioned. Daniel's name became shorthand for misjudgment. And I became irrelevant, which was exactly what I wanted. I declined interviews, refused commentary, let the truth stand on its own. My work filled the space anger once occupied. The foundation launched quietly. Scholarships funded. Emergency funds distributed to women whose stories echoed mine. Financial coercion disguised as concern. Each signature felt like reclamation. Each approval felt like defiance. Not loud, enduring. One afternoon, while reviewing grant applications, I found a familiar surname. Hale. A pause. A young woman, Daniel's cousin, had applied for assistance. Her letter was careful, honest. She wrote about leaving an abusive marriage, about starting over with nothing, about not wanting to ask, but needing to. I didn't recuse myself. I approved the grant, and I didn't tell anyone why. Daniel was sentenced 2 months later. Not dramatically. No cameras. Just procedure. I wasn't required to attend. I chose not to, because closure doesn't always need a front row seat. That night, I opened the drawer where his letter still rested. I took it out, read it once more. Then I shredded it slowly, piece by piece, not in anger, in completion. Later, standing on my balcony, city lights flickering like distant constellations, my phone buzzed. A final message from an unknown number. Unknown. I hope you're happy. I stared at the words, then typed back the truth. Me. I'm at peace. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No reply followed. I turned off my phone and stepped back inside. Tomorrow would be full. Meetings, decisions, life. The game Daniel thought he'd orchestrated ended the moment he underestimated my silence. Because silence isn't weakness. It's restraint. And restraint, when chosen, is power. The first morning I woke without thinking about Daniel felt strange. Not empty. Quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm finally moves on. When you step outside and realize the sky isn't holding anything over you anymore. I made coffee and drank it by the window, watching people hurry through their routines, unaware of the life I'd just finished surviving. No court dates on my calendar. No legal alerts on my phone. No unanswered messages pulling at my chest. Just space. And space, I learned, is where healing actually happens. The foundation grew faster than expected. Not because of the money, but because of the stories. Women didn't just apply for help. They wrote. They explained. They trusted. Some have been tricked by fake debts. Some by fake illnesses. Some by men who claimed love but practiced control. Patterns are loud once you know how to listen. Every time I approved a grant, I thought of Margaret, of the way she'd looked at me years ago and said, men like that don't fall. They're pushed by their own lies. She was right. Daniel faded from public conversation quickly. Scandals burned bright, but briefly. What remained was quieter and more permanent. No invitations. No leadership roles. No benefit of the doubt. People didn't ask what he'd done anymore. They asked who trusted him. That's the kind of consequence no sentence can undo. One afternoon, months later, I ran into someone who used to know us as a couple. You seem lighter, she said carefully. I am, I replied. She hesitated. Do you ever wish you'd fought him harder? Earlier, I thought about that. About the nights I cried silently. The days I doubted myself. The papers I signed with shaking hands. No, I said finally. I fought exactly when I was ready. She nodded. That makes sense. It did. Because survival isn't cowardice. It's strategy. I never remarried. not out of bitterness, out of clarity. I learned what partnership actually requires and what it should never cost. Love doesn't demand silence. Security doesn't require sacrifice of self. And anyone who needs you small will never deserve you whole. That knowledge was worth everything. On the anniversary of my divorce, I received a short note from my lawyer. Case officially closed. No further actions pending. I smiled. Then I closed the email and didn't think about Daniel again that day. Or the next. Or the next. That night, I cooked dinner. Nothing elaborate, just something warm and familiar. As I ate, I realized something quietly profound. The moment Daniel demanded I sign those papers, the moment he thought he was discarding me, he was actually releasing me. He thought money would save him. He thought deception made him clever. He thought I was something to be managed. What he never understood was that I was the only thing holding his life together. And when he let me go, everything else followed. I cleared my plate, turned off the lights, and stepped into a life that finally felt like mine. No performances, no fear, no games, just truth. And that, I learned, is the most expensive thing of all. Years later, people still asked about him. Not directly, not by name. They asked in careful phrases. What happened to your ex? Do you ever regret how things ended? Was it hard starting over? I always answer the same way. I didn't start over, I said. I started free. Daniel became a lesson people whispered about, an example of how quickly a life collapses when it's built on lies. The money disappeared. The influence evaporated. The friends he thought were loyal turned out to be temporary. Power, I learned, is rented. Integrity is owned. And he had sold us for nothing. The inheritance never changed me. It revealed me. It gave me room to breathe, space to choose, and the ability to say no without fear. It let me build something that lasted longer than revenge, something quieter and stronger, a life without permission. Sometimes I thought about the moment I signed the papers, the way my hand shook, the way he thought he'd won, and I smiled, because that signature, the one he believed ended me, was the first decision I ever made entirely for myself. He faked debt to escape responsibility. I signed freedom into existence. And the real game? It was never about money. It was about who walks away whole. I did, and he'll spend the rest of his life knowing it.